Two counties worked together to surprise people at 11 convenience stores with drug raids last month. The raids took place on the same day at the same time and led to 20 people being charged for crimes connected to dealing synthetic drugs. It's a move that had many residents who live near these stores saying, "Finally." While the 6 convenience stores raided in Elkhart County remain closed, those who frequented the shops to buy synthetics are still coping with addiction. News Center 16's Gabby Gonzalez has been working on a special report for months about this issue and joins us now with part 1 of Poison in a Packet. And Gabby, how long did it take the people you talked to get addicted to these drugs?
One woman says she smoked a joint of synthetic marijuana for the first time and instantly felt the effects. She says she was hooked right then and there. It wasn't long before she couldn't go more than 6 hours without getting another fix. The drug made her so aggressive, she says she couldn't drive down the street without having the urge to run people over. An addiction specialist tells me synthetic marijuana should be looked at as LSD times 10 in regards to its negative effects. From the moment the sun peeked through the morning clouds,
it was when I got up in the morning.
This Elkhart woman says she only had one thing on her mind.
I would have to smoke.
Still reeling from the consequences of her addiction, she asked us not to show her face.
I have a lot of guilt now because of things I did. And I was involved with that for 2.5 years.
A trip down certain Elkhart streets takes her back in time to a dark place in her life, like the many times she visited the Burger Dairy to buy synthetic drugs.
How easy was that when you walked in there to get it?
You made eye contact. You pulled your $20 out or your $50 or your $40 and they knew what you wanted.
That convenience store is now boarded up, seized by Elkhart County authorities. But the effects of the drugs sold here can't be as easily blocked off.
It's not who I am. And that stuff brought every bad aspect of me out. Mentally, I felt as if I was crazy. I was so mean. I didn't think about my son, myself, my boyfriend. I thought about fake weed, and if I didn't have it, I had to get it.
She would frequently drive down Franklin Street here, even dealing with the symptoms of withdrawal in the car, just to be able to come to one of these convenience stores and buy one more packet of synthetic drugs.
You are driving around Elkhart trying to get it. You are throwing up out of your car or in your hand. Your stomach, the pain.
It got to the point where she was spending $20 to $40 a day on synthetic drugs. She lost her home and her health was quickly worsening.
I knew at that point I'm going to die. I'm not going to just keep losing things.
So she turned to Oaklawn.
I lived in Pennsylvania.
John Gallagher is an addiction specialist there. He says they see people coming in every week for help coping with withdrawal symptoms.
Paranoia, hallucinations, auditory and visual. Sometimes they will act out on these paranoid thoughts. They have loss of appetite, vomiting, excessive sweating.
And you get the sweats. When I say you get the sweats, I mean, oh gosh, you get the sweats. For the first 2 days, I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of bed. All I did was throw up.
The mental effects of withdrawal from synthetics are more severe than those that come with what some consider hardcore drugs.
I would say that this synthetic marijuana is the most dangerous at producing this type of aggression this quickly. I mean, even folks that are using methamphetamine and cocaine-based drugs, to reach a level of this type of aggression and paranoia is unlikely to happen after a single use.
It was these little packets.
I don't know how many times I said, this is my last bag.
That forced this woman to leave her hometown to get away from what she calls an epidemic of synthetic drug use.
Half of Elkhart is walking around like zombies.
It's simply a poison that people are ingesting in their body.
The tough thing is that the drug tests they sell at pharmacies do not screen for these particular drugs. So if you're worried your child or someone you love is using, they need a specific test for this stuff. You'll have to go to a professional for a blood or urine test. Now, coming up tomorrow, we look at the supply chain for these synthetic drugs. Where are they coming from and what's being done to keep these drugs from even entering our community? That's all coming up in part 2 of Poison in a Packet.
Back in May, the federal government carried out a huge synthetic drug takedown in 29 states. But the battle against these drugs continues. Criminals are still getting the drugs into communities, including Michiana. News Center 16's Gabby Gonzalez went to Chicago to look into what Customs and Border Patrol officers are doing to stop the influx. So, Gabby, what's the chain of supply here? How are the drugs even getting into the country?
Well, synthetic drug dealers are using envelopes like this one to actually ship those synthetic drugs into the country. And they're getting creative too. They're using things like tinfoil balloons or even other props to make sure officers can't detect those synthetic drugs through the initial screenings. But mail facilities are catching up with them. They're actually ramping up their security and turning to science to make sure the synthetic drugs don't make it through Chicago, onto the toll road here, and then right here into Michiana. The sounds of incoming flights can be heard from this government facility at O'Hare.
You know, it's our job to protect the nation at all levels,
But the focus here is not on the sky.
including going through the mail.
Strict guidelines to determine what mail gets through to its final destination and what mail gets seized. During my visit, they found fake IDs, pills, a weapon, and even drugs.
Okay, there's a powder. That's going to be a synthetic.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection Chief Brian Bell has come across plenty of contraband.
A day does not go by where we don't find something.
One growing problem for them? More and more synthetic drugs.
Here at Chicago O'Hare, we're seeing synthetics coming on a daily basis. I mean, anywhere from a few grams to several pounds. This is an epidemic that we need to get under control.
At this facility in Chicago, they see 1 million packages every month. This is the first line of defense.
Here we have some designer drugs going to an individual in Indiana.
In this back room, there are carts full of packages that contain synthetic drugs.
Black Mamba Ultra. Here it's described as a novelty collector's item.
Simply identifying these drugs proved to be a challenge itself at first.
We just couldn't figure out why somebody would ship little things of potpourri, these little spice packages, and what was this? And it never tested positive in any of our kits. So we gave it to the lab, we did some research back and forth, and we identified initially as this HU210 substance coming out of Europe.
To battle this new substance, they've brought in a mobile lab.
The synthetics don't test in our normal drug testing kits like heroin, cocaine, or marijuana. So they have to use sophisticated technology to make the determination, is this something contrary to law?
Right next door, Neely Shepard, a senior chemist, is testing what's suspected to be synthetic drugs.
We really only need a small amount of sample.
An infrared instrument inspects a substance and searches the database. In a matter of minutes,
I do have a hit. It matches our reference spectrum for XLR11, which is a synthetic cannabinoid. Compared to the previous 10 years where you're just looking at heroin, cocaine, and meth, wasn't a whole lot of variety. And now we're getting a new substance every week or two.
and it's not just the final product being mailed into the U.S.
Parcel going to another individual in Indiana. This is the raw chemical. This small quantity can make pounds of the end product.
Bell says the people manufacturing this stuff don't take many precautions.
We're talking chemicals that are made in back rooms. There's not a whole lot of science in this, and we're not talking clean rooms. Most of the time it's done in somebody's kitchen or garage on a cookie sheet. And you could wind up with, no effect or something that is so potent that can lead to immediate death.
It's that unpredictability that's led the federal government to track down who's involved, starting off with the address on these parcels.
If you're getting this, you can potentially expect a knock on your door.
And the drug sniffing dogs you saw in that video, they can't actually detect synthetic drugs in those packages. That's why having that mobile lab on site at the O'Hare facility is so crucial in all of this. Also, a source very familiar with operations at one of the convenience stores charged with dealing synthetic drugs in our area tells me she would frequently see a white van coming in from Chicago and delivering materials here. So people are sending these things via mail and also coming in cars from bigger cities. Reporting from South Bend on the toll road, I'm Gabby Gonzalez, News Center 16.
Our special report, Poison in a Packet, on the synthetic drug problem in Michiana continues today. While law enforcement is cracking down on those importing and selling these drugs, there's a renewed effort to inform parents about these substances so they can keep them out of their homes. News Center 16's Gabby Gonzalez joins me now in the studio. And Gabby, most parents know to be on the lookout for these drugs, but as a mom, I'm interested, what's the difference with these synthetic drugs?
Well, these drugs come in packets like this one. We've actually enlarged this photo so you can get a closer look at it. They're pretty small, colorful, and have designs that make them look more like candy than a dangerous drug. That one right there is actually called Scooby Snacks. So the battle against these synthetic drugs is twofold. Charge those selling it and make sure people know just how serious this stuff can be, despite the very deceiving packaging. The laughter emanating from rides and alluring scent of fair food will be the backdrop to more serious conversations at this year's Elkhart County Fair. Amid the usual vendors will be one booth dedicated to teaching parents about a very different kind of high.
So we're going to be putting in all the time in that booth to educating parents on one level, kids on another level, just to make sure the message is getting through.
There won't be games or prizes. Instead, brochures like this one listing the dangers of synthetic drugs.
This is the poison. This is the stuff that should have that green skull and crossbones that, those old stickers you used to get from poison control. You've got to presume that if your kids are getting into this stuff, they're getting poisoned.
Elkhart County Chief Deputy Prosecutor Vicki Becker says the hope is that parents can intervene with their kids before it's too late.
The last thing we want is for them to be attending their child's funeral while they're sitting there saying, I wish I would have known.
Just last month, the Elkhart County Prosecutor's Office charged 11 people after drug raids at 6 convenience stores, 3 homes, and a storage unit. 1,400 packets of synthetic drugs seized. News Center 16 obtained these exclusive photos from the investigation. Garbage bags filled with synthetic brand names like 7H, Mr. Devil, and Pure Fire, items found inside these Elkhart County businesses.
And the reality is that people are dying as a result of ingesting these look-alike or synthetic drugs. Their minds are freaking out.
Those who utilize these otherwise legitimate business resources in order to line their own pockets by killing our kids, that's not okay.
So Becker says they've set an example of what will happen to those who continue selling synthetic drugs.
This is meant just as much to deter future behavior.
And if we have to take your stores, we'll take your stores. If we run you out of business, we'll run you out of business. If we need to run you out of town, we'll run you out of town. But we cannot, as a community, as communities, allow for people to profit by selling substances that are killing our youth.
For the week of the fair, efforts will turn to reaching out to parents so they know exactly what to look out for when it comes to synthetic drugs.
And they look like candy, they look like iPhones, they look fun, they look intriguing, they look harmless. The problem is the contents of those wrappers are deadly.
Plus, they'll be delving into the side effects of synthetics, like seizures, heart failure, and yes, death.
Kids don't normally pour bleach down their throat. They don't normally, engage in, poisons, rat poisons, and that kind of thing. If they know this is what this stuff is, our goal is to educate. So any parent that wants to stop and chat a little bit, we're going to spend quite a bit of time filling them with facts that are out there, scientific research, specific situations, specific cases, so that they understand the real danger that's out there.
And to go along with their efforts at the fair, the Elkhart County Prosecutor's Office has also added a lot of information to their website about what people need to know about these synthetic drugs and resources out there for those who are addicted and need help. We have a link to all this information on our website, WNDU.com. Just click on this story.
All right, Gabby. Thanks. Good information. The Elkhart County Fair starts tomorrow and goes through July 26th. The prosecutor's office will be in the commercial building E, booths 6 and 7 at the Elkhart County 4-H Fair, July 18th through 26th.